Marcus always believed in hard work, discipline, and loyalty. Growing up in a modest neighborhood, he had watched his mother, Lillian, overcome obstacles that many would have thought impossible. She had raised him alone after his father passed away when Marcus was just a small boy. Lillian worked multiple jobs, sometimes late into the night, to ensure Marcus never felt the sting of financial struggle or the weight of disappointment. Her love was constant, her guidance firm but gentle, and her presence a pillar of stability in Marcus's life. As a child, he had admired her resilience. As a teenager, he had relied on her advice for everything, from homework to life choices. And now, as a successful CEO of a thriving company in his early 30s, Marcus never forgot where he came from or who had shaped him into the man he had become. Even with his success, Marcus remained humble. He knew what it meant to struggle and had worked tirelessly to build his company from the ground up. His days were long and often filled with meetings, phone calls, and endless emails, but he always made time for family. Sundays were reserved for his mother. It was a ritual they both cherished: breakfast together, sharing news, stories, and sometimes quiet laughter over coffee. Marcus often reflected on how different his life might have been without her guidance. She had taught him not only how to achieve success but also how to remain grounded in a world that could easily overwhelm someone with power and wealth. It was during one of these Sunday breakfasts that Marcus first mentioned Tiffany. Lillian had heard about her through Marcus's casual stories over the past few weeks. He spoke with excitement, describing Tiffany's charm, her intelligence, and her career achievements. "Mom, she's different from anyone I've ever met," he said, eyes lighting up. "I feel like I can really be myself with her. She understands me in a way that no one else has." Lillian listened carefully, sipping her coffee, her face calm but her mind alert. She smiled, but deep down, a familiar sense of caution stirred. Lillian had learned over the years that appearances could be deceiving. She remembered friends who had rushed into relationships only to discover hidden truths too late. She knew Marcus's heart was kind and trusting, sometimes overly so, and she worried that it could leave him vulnerable. It wasn't that she disliked Tiffany, she had yet to meet her, but a mother's intuition rarely rested. Lillian decided she would observe carefully before forming any judgments, but she resolved to be vigilant. Protecting Marcus had always been her priority, and she knew that sometimes love required careful scrutiny as much as support. A few weeks later, Marcus invited Lillian to dinner, formally introducing Tiffany to her. The restaurant was elegant, filled with soft lighting and the quiet hum of conversation. Marcus's excitement was palpable as Tiffany arrived, dressed stylishly, her smile bright. She greeted Lillian warmly, shaking her hand with practiced politeness. At first glance, Tiffany seemed perfect, friendly, charming, and articulate. Lillian nodded politely, exchanged pleasantries, and observed quietly. During dinner, Tiffany shared stories about her career and her family, and she listened attentively when Marcus spoke about his company. Lillian noticed small things: the way Tiffany seemed to focus on material achievements, how she subtly guided conversations toward herself, and how she occasionally offered compliments that felt rehearsed. These were not obvious red flags, just tiny hints that something might not be entirely genuine. Lillian made a mental note, deciding she would pay closer attention before drawing any conclusions. After dinner, Marcus and Tiffany thanked Lillian warmly, and Marcus's face was full of pride and joy. "Mom, you'll see," he said as they walked toward the car. "Tiffany is amazing. I think she's the one." Lillian smiled, her heart torn between happiness for her son and her cautious instincts. "I'm glad you're happy, Marcus," she replied softly, "but always remember to watch closely. People are not always what they seem." Marcus chuckled and shrugged, brushing off her words with the confidence of someone in love. Lillian, however, remained thoughtful. In the days that followed, Marcus's life seemed to glow with a new energy. He was more relaxed, smiling more, and even his work seemed to benefit from his renewed happiness. Lillian observed from a distance, noticing how Tiffany fit seamlessly into Marcus's life. She accompanied him to business events, met his colleagues, and seemed eager to become part of his world. Yet, despite the outward perfection, Lillian's intuition whispered caution. She began to pay attention to subtle behaviors, the way Tiffany reacted to service staff, how she spoke about friends and family, and how she managed situations when things did not go her way. Lillian's observations were meticulous. She knew that true character revealed itself in small, often overlooked moments. One Saturday afternoon, Lillian visited Marcus's home unannounced, finding Tiffany there helping with household tasks. Tiffany greeted her warmly, showing charm and grace, but Lillian noticed the way she subtly directed Marcus's attention, guiding conversations to her achievements and downplaying any mention of Marcus's past struggles. It was small, almost invisible, but Lillian recognized it immediately. She did not comment outwardly, instead making quiet notes in her mind. She would need more time to understand Tiffany fully. Lillian decided to take a cautious approach. Rather than confronting Marcus or Tiffany, she began to plan subtle ways to observe Tiffany without revealing her concerns. She wanted to see Tiffany in different settings, under different circumstances, to understand her true nature. Lillian had learned over the years that rushing to judgment could be dangerous. Careful observation and patience often revealed more than confrontation ever could. She also wanted to be sure of her feelings before intervening, because she knew how deeply Marcus loved Tiffany and how devastating any revelation could be. As the weeks passed, Lillian noticed patterns in Tiffany's behavior. She saw glimpses of impatience when things did not go her way, small acts of selfishness, and moments when Tiffany's politeness seemed more like performance than sincerity. Lillian did not act immediately, keeping her observations private. She continued to support Marcus outwardly, smiling at his happiness and praising the relationship in casual conversation, all while quietly recording the signs that troubled her. One evening, Lillian sat alone in her living room, reflecting on the situation. She remembered her own experiences with people who had hidden motives, and she considered the potential consequences if Tiffany was not who she appeared to be. She thought of Marcus, his kind heart, and his tendency to trust easily. Lillian's maternal instinct grew stronger. She realized that she might need to act to protect him, but she wanted to be absolutely certain. Acting hastily could damage her relationship with Marcus or cause unnecessary hurt. She resolved to plan carefully, to gather more information before taking any action. The tension in Lillian's mind was balanced by her love for Marcus. She wanted him to be happy but not at the cost of his well-being. She reflected on the lessons she had taught him, the importance of integrity, kindness, and discernment in relationships. Lillian understood that love alone was not enough, it had to be combined with respect, honesty, and compatibility. She knew that if Tiffany lacked these qualities, Marcus's future happiness could be at risk. This thought strengthened her resolve to observe discreetly, to uncover the truth before it was too late. By the end of part 1, Lillian had made her decision. She would not confront Marcus directly, and she would not accuse Tiffany without evidence. Instead, she would take a quiet, careful approach, finding subtle ways to interact with Tiffany and observe her character in various settings. Lillian's mind was filled with scenarios, questions, and possibilities. She knew the path ahead might be challenging, but she also understood the stakes, her son's heart, his trust, and his future. With patience, caution, and unwavering love, Lillian prepared herself for the task ahead, determined to protect Marcus from any potential harm, while hoping that Tiffany might prove herself worthy of his love. Lillian knew that observing Tiffany from a distance was not enough. If she truly wanted to understand the woman her son was planning to marry, she would need to be closer, more involved, without revealing her true identity. The idea had been forming in her mind for weeks, and after careful consideration, she decided to take action. Lillian's plan was simple in theory but required careful execution. She would introduce herself to Tiffany as someone connected to the wedding planning process, someone Tiffany could trust without suspicion. This would allow Lillian to interact with her directly and observe her character in various situations. The opportunity came when Marcus mentioned that Tiffany wanted professional help with some wedding preparations. He had casually suggested hiring a consultant, and Lillian immediately saw a chance to step in. She presented herself to Tiffany as an experienced consultant, specializing in helping couples organize their weddings smoothly. Tiffany, flattered by Lillian's supposed expertise, welcomed her help without hesitation. Marcus did not suspect a thing, trusting his mother completely, and Lillian used this trust to gain access to Tiffany's world. From the very first meeting, Lillian paid close attention. Tiffany was polite, smiling warmly, and seemed genuinely excited about the wedding preparations. She praised Lillian's experience, asking questions and listening attentively to advice. Outwardly, everything appeared perfect. Lillian smiled and engaged, offering suggestions and guidance on wedding planning, seating arrangements, and floral decorations. But underneath the surface, she was analyzing Tiffany's behavior, watching for the smallest signs of deception or selfishness. Every glance, every word, every action mattered. Over the next few weeks, Lillian became a regular presence in Tiffany's life. She accompanied her to bridal fittings, helped organize the guest list, and even assisted in selecting invitations. On the surface, Tiffany was gracious and charming, always expressing gratitude and admiration for Lillian's input. But Lillian noticed subtle inconsistencies. Tiffany sometimes exaggerated stories about her past achievements or made small remarks that hinted at impatience with others. When things did not go exactly her way, Tiffany's polite demeanor would momentarily falter, revealing flashes of frustration or irritation. Lillian remained calm and patient. She understood that observing someone over time revealed more than any single interaction could. She watched how Tiffany treated people who could not offer her anything in return, such as staff at the bridal shop or waiters at restaurants. Lillian noticed the difference in Tiffany's behavior when she was interacting with someone of authority versus someone she perceived as lower status. There were moments when Tiffany's charm seemed like a carefully crafted performance rather than genuine kindness. Lillian documented these observations mentally, preparing for the possibility that her instincts were correct. One afternoon, while helping Tiffany choose bridesmaid dresses, Lillian observed a subtle but telling interaction. Tiffany was discussing options with her friend, casually dismissing suggestions that did not match her personal taste. When a sales assistant offered alternative ideas, Tiffany thanked her politely but quickly returned to focusing on her own preferences, showing little regard for others' opinions. Lillian noted the behavior carefully. It was not overtly cruel, but it revealed a sense of self-centeredness. She continued to watch silently, resisting the urge to intervene prematurely. At the same time, Lillian made a point to interact with Tiffany in casual, unscripted moments. She asked personal questions, inquiring about Tiffany's family, friendships, and past experiences. Tiffany shared information selectively, sometimes evading certain topics or offering vague responses. Lillian detected subtle signs of discomfort or hesitation when Tiffany spoke about her background. These small details added to Lillian's growing concern. She understood that anyone could appear perfect on the surface, but true character revealed itself under observation and pressure. Lillian also noticed how Tiffany interacted with Marcus in private moments. While Tiffany seemed affectionate and attentive, there were times when she subtly redirected conversations to focus on herself or on what she wanted. She complimented Marcus when it served her narrative and seemed impatient when discussions centered on topics she found less interesting. Lillian did not jump to conclusions, but she carefully recorded each instance in her mind, creating a picture of Tiffany's personality that was more complex than Marcus's perception. One evening, Lillian attended a small gathering with Tiffany and some of Marcus's colleagues. The event was informal, but it offered another opportunity for observation. Tiffany was charming, confident, and articulate, easily engaging with everyone in the room. Yet, Lillian noticed the difference in her tone and behavior when she spoke with Marcus's friends compared to when she spoke with those she considered less important. Tiffany's kindness and friendliness seemed situational, directed toward those she deemed valuable. Lillian quietly made note of this, realizing that it was a subtle but important pattern in Tiffany's behavior. Despite these red flags, Lillian did not want to let bias cloud her judgment. She reminded herself to look for consistent patterns, not isolated incidents. She continued to interact naturally with Tiffany, offering guidance, asking questions, and observing responses. Lillian found herself mentally role-playing different scenarios, imagining how Tiffany would react in various situations, from simple misunderstandings to stressful events. She used these exercises to gauge Tiffany's potential as a life partner for her son. There were moments when Tiffany genuinely impressed Lillian. She was intelligent, articulate, and capable of handling complex situations with grace. Lillian acknowledged these qualities internally, understanding that no person was perfect. But she also remained alert to inconsistencies and behaviors that suggested selfishness or manipulation. Lillian knew that a successful marriage required more than charm or intelligence, it required integrity, empathy, and respect. Her observations were driven by the desire to ensure that Marcus would be safe and happy in a long-term partnership. As the weeks passed, Lillian began to gather more evidence. She noticed instances where Tiffany's politeness faltered when she did not receive immediate attention or recognition. She observed moments when Tiffany subtly tested Marcus's generosity, asking for favors or guidance in ways that seemed designed to gauge his limits. Lillian's concern grew, and she realized that she might need to act more decisively if these patterns continued. She also recognized that confronting Marcus prematurely could backfire. He was deeply in love and might not see the truth until it was too late. Lillian decided to expand her undercover role further. She offered to help Tiffany with errands, attended more appointments, and spent time observing Tiffany in both professional and personal contexts. This allowed Lillian to see how Tiffany handled stress, setbacks, and interactions with people she could not control. It became increasingly clear that Tiffany's charm was often a performance, and her true character emerged in moments of challenge or inconvenience. Lillian documented each observation carefully, preparing for the moment when she might need to reveal the truth to Marcus. Despite the tension and careful observation, Lillian also found moments of personal reflection. She remembered her own experiences with people who had hidden intentions and how she had learned to trust her instincts over time. She knew that her careful approach was not only necessary but also a demonstration of love and protection for Marcus. Lillian's resolve strengthened, and she reminded herself that her goal was not to punish Tiffany but to ensure her son's happiness and well-being. By the end of this period, Lillian had developed a detailed understanding of Tiffany's personality. She had seen moments of genuine warmth and capability, but she had also observed patterns of self-interest, manipulation, and occasional insincerity. Lillian knew that these patterns could have serious consequences for Marcus if left unchecked. She prepared herself mentally for the next steps, understanding that careful planning and timing would be essential in revealing the truth. Lillian's undercover efforts had also changed her relationship with Tiffany. While Tiffany remained unaware of Lillian's true identity, she began to trust and rely on her advice. Lillian used this trust to observe, question, and gather information subtly. She also maintained her outward support for Marcus, ensuring that he remained unaware of her concerns. Lillian's careful balance of observation and guidance was delicate but necessary. She knew that the coming weeks would be critical in determining whether Tiffany was truly worthy of Marcus's love and trust. By the conclusion of Part 2, Lillian had fully integrated herself into Tiffany's world. She had observed, documented, and analyzed behavior over time, gaining insights into Tiffany's character that no casual interaction could reveal. Lillian's instincts remained vigilant, and her resolve to protect her son had never been stronger. She understood that the path ahead would require patience, courage, and strategic action, but she was ready. The next phase of her plan would reveal whether Tiffany's charm was genuine or merely a mask, and whether Marcus's happiness was at risk. As the weeks passed, Lillian became more confident in her observations of Tiffany. Her undercover role allowed her to see the young woman in many situations, both planned and unplanned. At first, she had seen minor signs of self-interest, little things that might have been brushed off as personality quirks. But now, patterns were emerging, and they were troubling. Lillian realized that Tiffany's charm was not always genuine. There were moments when her polite smile faded, replaced by impatience, frustration, or subtle manipulation. These moments were brief, almost imperceptible to anyone else, but Lillian's trained instincts recognized them immediately. One afternoon, Lillian accompanied Tiffany to a high-end boutique. Tiffany wanted to select some accessories for the wedding, and Lillian offered her professional guidance as a consultant. Tiffany listened politely, asked questions, and seemed appreciative. But as the shopping trip continued, Lillian noticed small, telling behaviors. When a salesperson offered her an alternative, Tiffany smiled but ignored the suggestion, reverting to her original choice. When another customer sought assistance, Tiffany barely acknowledged her, as if her attention was too valuable to be shared. These were subtle signs, but they painted a picture of someone whose concern for others was conditional, dependent on their status or usefulness. Lillian's observations grew more concerning over time. She began to notice how Tiffany interacted with Marcus's colleagues and friends. At formal events, Tiffany was charming, articulate, and warm, making everyone feel included. But outside these events, in smaller, more casual settings, Tiffany's behavior shifted. She spoke over others, redirected conversations to herself, and subtly tested people's generosity or patience. Lillian realized that Tiffany's kindness was sometimes a performance, designed to impress rather than to genuinely connect. The most troubling discovery came one evening during a private dinner with Marcus and Tiffany. Lillian had joined them as part of her consultant role, ostensibly helping with wedding planning. During the conversation, Tiffany casually mentioned details about her past relationships, but Lillian noticed inconsistencies. She had heard slightly different stories from Tiffany during previous conversations, and some details now contradicted what had been said before. Lillian's concern deepened. The inconsistencies suggested that Tiffany might be hiding important truths, carefully curating the image she presented to Marcus and to everyone else. Lillian's heart ached as she considered the implications. She knew Marcus's love for Tiffany was sincere, deep, and unquestioning. He trusted her completely, just as he had always trusted his mother. Lillian also knew that confronting him prematurely could shatter his happiness and potentially damage their relationship. She had to be strategic, careful, and patient. Protecting Marcus meant uncovering the full truth before taking any action, and that required more observation, more insight, and careful documentation of everything she saw. Over the next few days, Lillian decided to increase her involvement subtly. She suggested helping Tiffany organize wedding invitations and sending thank-you notes. Tiffany welcomed the assistance, trusting Lillian's expertise. While they worked together, Lillian paid attention to Tiffany's reactions under stress. She noticed how Tiffany responded when a supplier made a small mistake, when a color option she preferred was unavailable, or when a minor inconvenience disrupted her plan. In these moments, Tiffany's frustration occasionally surfaced. She was polite, yes, but there were flashes of irritation, impatience, and an expectation that others should adjust to her preferences without question. Lillian's observations were not limited to Tiffany's behavior toward strangers or professionals. She watched how Tiffany treated Marcus. On the surface, Tiffany seemed loving, affectionate, and attentive. But subtle patterns emerged, moments when she redirected conversations to focus on herself, times when she tested Marcus's generosity, and occasions when she downplayed his achievements to highlight her own. These actions were subtle but consistent, and they confirmed Lillian's growing concern that Tiffany's intentions might not be entirely sincere. One day, Lillian decided to test Tiffany in a small, unobtrusive way. She suggested a minor change to the wedding plan that required flexibility and cooperation. Tiffany's initial reaction was polite but resistant. She made excuses, hinted that the change was inconvenient, and subtly tried to shift responsibility back onto others. Lillian observed silently, taking mental notes. This behavior, combined with earlier patterns, reinforced her suspicion that Tiffany's charm was sometimes a mask for self-interest. Lillian knew she needed to see how Tiffany reacted in more significant situations before forming any final conclusions. The true revelation came unexpectedly. Lillian was invited to accompany Tiffany to a family event that Marcus could not attend due to work commitments. Tiffany's relatives were warm and welcoming, and she navigated the gathering with ease, introducing Lillian as her wedding consultant. Everything seemed perfect, but then Lillian witnessed a side of Tiffany that shocked her. When one of Tiffany's distant relatives asked for help with a minor issue, Tiffany dismissed the request, expressing irritation and impatience. She smiled for appearances but spoke harshly in private, criticizing the family member for asking for assistance. Lillian's heart sank. This behavior confirmed her growing fear. Tiffany's kindness and charm were often reserved for situations that benefited her image or agenda. As Lillian continued to observe, more inconsistencies and troubling behaviors came to light. She noticed how Tiffany reacted when Marcus's attention was divided, subtly demanding affirmation and prioritization. She observed moments of manipulation, where Tiffany framed situations to her advantage, sometimes bending the truth or exaggerating facts to influence outcomes. Each instance added weight to Lillian's concerns. She realized that if Marcus continued on this path without understanding Tiffany's true character, he could face disappointment and heartache. Lillian also began to consider the long-term implications. Marriage was not just about charm, affection, or intelligence, it was about trust, respect, and partnership. She reflected on her own life and the lessons she had learned through experience. She knew that a strong marriage required honesty, empathy, and the ability to navigate challenges together. Tiffany's behavior, as observed over several weeks, raised questions about her ability to embody these qualities consistently. Lillian understood that her role was now critical. She needed to ensure Marcus was aware of the truth before it was too late. The emotional weight of her discovery was heavy. Lillian cared for Marcus deeply and did not want to hurt him unnecessarily. She also knew that Tiffany was skilled at presenting a polished image, capable of convincing anyone of her sincerity. Lillian needed evidence, consistent patterns, and undeniable proof before confronting Marcus. This required patience, careful planning, and continued observation. She could not allow emotions alone to dictate her actions. Her son's happiness depended on clarity, truth, and timing. Despite the tension, Lillian remained composed. She continued to interact with Tiffany naturally, maintaining her consultant persona while quietly documenting behavior. She observed how Tiffany handled small inconveniences, tested generosity, and interacted with people in different social and professional contexts. Every action, word, and expression was noted. Lillian also reflected on the potential impact on Marcus, preparing herself to explain the truth in a way that would be understandable, empathetic, and convincing. By the end of this period, Lillian had gathered enough evidence to feel certain that Tiffany's intentions were not entirely pure. The small red flags from previous weeks had now grown into undeniable patterns. Lillian's observations showed a consistent blend of charm, manipulation, self-interest, and selective kindness. She knew that revealing the truth to Marcus would be challenging, but she also understood that protecting him from potential harm was her responsibility as a mother. Lillian felt a mixture of sadness, determination, and relief. Sadness for the potential heartbreak, determination to protect her son, and relief that her instincts had been validated through careful observation. Lillian spent several evenings reflecting on her next steps. She considered the best way to reveal the truth to Marcus, the timing, and the approach. She wanted him to understand the full picture without feeling attacked, embarrassed, or confused. She also prepared for the possibility that Marcus might initially resist or doubt her observations, given his love and trust for Tiffany. Lillian knew that clarity, patience, and empathy would be essential in guiding him toward the truth. By the close of Part 3, Lillian's undercover investigation had reached a critical point. She had observed Tiffany in multiple settings, documented behavioral patterns, and uncovered inconsistencies that revealed a deeper truth. Tiffany's charm and intelligence were real but often accompanied by manipulation and self-interest. Lillian now had the clarity she needed to plan the confrontation, knowing that her son's happiness and future depended on the careful revelation of these findings. The stage was set for the next phase of the story, a confrontation that would challenge loyalties, test love, and ultimately protect Marcus from a potentially harmful relationship. Lillian had spent weeks observing Tiffany, gathering evidence, and analyzing behavior. She knew she could no longer remain silent. The truth could not wait any longer, and Marcus deserved to see it before taking the next step in his life. Lillian's heart was heavy. She loved her son deeply and did not want to hurt him unnecessarily. At the same time, she knew that delaying this revelation could lead to far greater pain. Carefully, she planned her approach, deciding that she would confront Tiffany first and then, at the right moment, reveal everything to Marcus. The next day, Lillian arranged to meet Tiffany at Marcus's apartment under the pretense of helping finalize wedding details. Tiffany greeted her warmly, oblivious to the purpose of the visit. Lillian smiled, maintaining her calm and professional demeanor. As they went through seating arrangements and decoration plans, Lillian subtly shifted the conversation toward personal values, character, and intentions. She asked open-ended questions, gently probing Tiffany's past and observing her reactions carefully. Tiffany responded with practiced charm, but Lillian could detect the subtle tension, the hesitations, and the inconsistencies that she had been noting for weeks. Lillian decided it was time to be more direct. She asked Tiffany about her past relationships and about some inconsistencies she had noticed. Tiffany's response was immediate and defensive. She smiled, laughed nervously, and tried to explain her answers away, claiming that her words had been misunderstood or misremembered. Lillian remained calm, unwavering, and kind, but firm. She gently reminded Tiffany that honesty was the foundation of any strong relationship and that Marcus deserved someone trustworthy and sincere. Tiffany's expression shifted from nervousness to irritation, and Lillian saw the true colors she had been observing for weeks: frustration at being confronted and an attempt to regain control of the situation. "You see, Tiffany," Lillian said softly, "I have spent time observing, listening, and understanding. I care for Marcus deeply, and I want nothing more than his happiness. But happiness depends on truth. I am asking you now to be completely honest. Are you here because you genuinely love him, or for other reasons?" Tiffany hesitated, her polite facade faltering. She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it, unsure of how to navigate the confrontation. Lillian remained calm, her presence gentle but unwavering. She was not angry or accusatory, she was a mother protecting her son from potential harm. The tension in the room was palpable. Tiffany tried to recover her composure, offering excuses and explanations. She spoke of her love for Marcus, her excitement about the future, and her desire to make everything perfect. But Lillian could sense the contradictions, the subtle evasions, and the lingering traces of self-interest. Lillian listened, nodding quietly, allowing Tiffany to speak, while mentally documenting every reaction. She knew that Marcus needed to see this truth firsthand, but she also wanted to give Tiffany an opportunity to respond honestly. Finally, Lillian concluded the conversation with one last gentle warning. "Marcus loves you, and he trusts you. If you truly care for him, your actions must reflect sincerity, respect, and honesty. Otherwise, it will only lead to pain for both of you." Tiffany's smile returned, but it was forced, fragile, and thin. She nodded politely but offered no real reassurance. Lillian had seen enough. She knew her suspicions were confirmed. Tiffany's charm and intelligence were often accompanied by manipulation and self-interest. The time had come to speak with Marcus. Later that evening, Lillian called Marcus to the living room. He entered the room, smiling, unaware of the gravity of the situation. Lillian invited him to sit and took a deep breath. She spoke with calm clarity, beginning gently, recounting her observations without judgment, exaggeration, or accusation. She explained how Tiffany's actions and words revealed patterns of behavior that were not always aligned with genuine love and integrity. She presented the inconsistencies, the subtle manipulations, and the moments when Tiffany's charm seemed like a performance rather than sincere affection. Marcus's initial reaction was disbelief. He loved Tiffany deeply and could not imagine that she might not be completely genuine. He listened carefully, but his eyes betrayed confusion, hurt, and a struggle to reconcile what he wanted to believe with what he was hearing. Lillian remained patient, understanding his emotional struggle. She knew that revealing uncomfortable truths to someone in love required sensitivity, empathy, and unwavering calm. She spoke not to criticize but to illuminate, to guide Marcus toward clarity. As Lillian continued, she shared specific examples she had observed. She described moments when Tiffany had redirected conversations, tested generosity, or reacted with subtle frustration when situations did not go her way. She recounted the dinner party, the boutique visits, and small interactions that revealed patterns of behavior over time. Marcus's expression shifted from confusion to shock as the details unfolded. He felt a mixture of disbelief, sadness, and the painful recognition that his mother's observations were credible and consistent. "It's hard to hear this, Mom," Marcus admitted, his voice trembling. "I love her. I thought she was perfect for me." Lillian reached out, holding his hand gently. "I know, Marcus. Love is powerful, and charm can be convincing. But love alone is not enough. A strong, lasting relationship requires honesty, respect, and trust. I have only shared what I observed because I care about you and your happiness." Marcus nodded slowly, the weight of the revelation settling in. The next step was the most difficult. Marcus had to confront Tiffany and make a decision about the future. Lillian suggested that he speak with her directly, using calm and honest communication. She stayed nearby, providing support but allowing him to take ownership of the situation. Marcus invited Tiffany to sit down, his hands shaking slightly, his heart heavy with the knowledge he had gained. He spoke clearly, expressing his love but also his concerns based on the information Lillian had shared. Tiffany's initial response was defensive, then anxious, and finally confused as Marcus recounted what he now understood. Tiffany attempted to explain, apologize, and justify her actions, but Marcus remained resolute. He had seen the evidence, listened to his mother's observations, and reflected on his own experiences. He realized that while he had hoped for perfection, he could not ignore patterns that might cause future pain. The conversation was difficult, emotional, and heart-wrenching. Tears were shed, voices shook, and emotions ran high. But clarity emerged through honesty and courage. Marcus recognized that ending the relationship, though painful, was necessary for his well-being and future happiness. When the decision was made, Lillian felt a mixture of relief and sadness. She had acted to protect her son, and he had listened, understood, and made a difficult but wise choice. Marcus thanked his mother, embracing her tightly. "Mom, I know this was hard for you too. I appreciate everything you've done for me. You saved me from a mistake I might have regretted forever." Lillian smiled through tears, feeling the deep bond between mother and son strengthen even further. Her instincts had been right, and her careful, patient approach had made the difference. The confrontation also allowed Marcus to reflect on his own understanding of relationships. He realized that love must be balanced with discernment, honesty, and respect. He recognized that charm and intelligence were not enough to sustain a partnership, and that true compatibility required integrity and empathy. Lillian's intervention had taught him a vital life lesson, that love without clarity could be dangerous, and that the guidance of those who care deeply could provide the perspective needed to make wise choices. Tiffany, meanwhile, left the conversation with mixed emotions. She experienced frustration, regret, and self-reflection, realizing that her actions had consequences. The confrontation forced her to face her behavior and understand that genuine relationships could not be built on manipulation or selective charm. While it was a difficult lesson for her, it underscored the importance of sincerity, respect, and empathy in all relationships. By the end of the evening, a sense of resolution settled over Marcus and Lillian. Though the experience had been emotionally taxing, it reinforced the trust between mother and son and highlighted the value of careful observation, honesty, and courage. Marcus felt grateful for Lillian's unwavering love and guidance, knowing that she had acted out of concern and wisdom rather than control or judgment. Lillian, in turn, felt relief and quiet satisfaction that her careful planning, patience, and maternal instinct had protected her son from potential heartache. As the night drew to a close, Marcus reflected on the lessons he had learned. He understood that love, while powerful, must be tempered with insight and careful observation. He acknowledged the importance of family guidance, recognizing that those who care for us often see truths we cannot immediately perceive. Lillian's actions had prevented a mistake that might have caused deep emotional pain, and Marcus's gratitude for her wisdom was profound. By the conclusion of Part 4, Marcus had faced the difficult truth, confronted Tiffany, and made the courageous decision to end the relationship. Lillian's careful planning, patience, and keen observation had guided the process, ensuring that the truth was revealed with clarity, empathy, and integrity. The emotional tension of the confrontation gave way to relief, understanding, and strengthened family bonds. The story had reached a pivotal moment where love, trust, and wisdom intersected, shaping the path for Marcus's future and reinforcing the unbreakable bond between mother and son. After the confrontation, life settled into a quiet rhythm for Marcus and Lillian. The initial shock of discovering Tiffany's true nature had been difficult, but it had also brought clarity. Marcus spent the first few days in reflection, grappling with a mixture of emotions: sadness over the lost relationship, relief that the truth had been revealed, and gratitude for his mother's unwavering guidance. Lillian remained close, offering support without intruding, giving Marcus the space he needed to process his feelings while reminding him that he was not alone. Marcus found himself thinking deeply about relationships, love, and trust. He realized that the charm and intelligence that had initially drawn him to Tiffany were only part of a person's character. True compatibility required integrity, empathy, and respect, qualities that Tiffany had shown inconsistently. Marcus understood that ending the relationship was not a failure or a loss, but a necessary step to protect his future happiness. He appreciated the value of clarity and foresight, lessons that he might not have learned without Lillian's careful observation and courage. Lillian, for her part, felt a complex mixture of relief and emotional exhaustion. She had carried the weight of uncertainty, carefully balancing her love for Marcus with the need to uncover the truth. Her undercover role had required patience, subtlety, and strategic thinking, and it had been emotionally taxing. Yet, seeing Marcus emerge from the situation wiser, more self-aware, and unhurt in the long run gave her a profound sense of satisfaction. She knew she had acted in his best interest, protecting him from potential heartache and disappointment. The weeks following the revelation were a period of healing and reflection. Marcus focused on himself, dedicating more time to personal growth, work, and strengthening family bonds. He realized the importance of maintaining balance in life and the value of listening to trusted voices, particularly those of loved ones who had his best interests at heart. Lillian remained a constant source of support, offering advice when needed but never imposing her opinions, allowing Marcus to rebuild confidence in his own judgment while reinforcing the lessons she had imparted. One afternoon, Marcus invited Lillian for a quiet walk in the park. The air was crisp, the sun warm on their faces, and the familiar rhythm of nature provided a soothing backdrop. They spoke casually at first, about work, mutual friends, and daily life, but soon the conversation turned deeper. Marcus expressed his gratitude for Lillian's intervention and acknowledged how difficult it must have been for her to watch quietly, knowing she needed to act eventually. Lillian smiled, touched by his understanding, and reminded him that her actions had always been guided by love, not control. "I know this was hard for you, Mom," Marcus said thoughtfully. "I was blind at first, but now I see why you did it. You didn't just protect me from someone who wasn't right, you helped me understand myself better. I see what I need in a partner now, someone who truly respects and values me, not just someone who is charming or intelligent." Lillian nodded, her heart full. She had always wanted Marcus to grow into a man who could make wise, thoughtful decisions, and seeing him reflect on these lessons brought her immense pride. Marcus also realized the importance of discernment in love and relationships. He reflected on how easily charm and superficial traits could mask true character and how vital it was to pay attention to actions, not just words. The experience with Tiffany had taught him to value honesty, integrity, and genuine care above appearances or material achievements. He felt empowered by the clarity he had gained, understanding that future relationships required both emotional connection and careful observation. During this time, Marcus also took the opportunity to reconnect with friends and colleagues. He found comfort in conversations with people who had known him for years and had witnessed his growth. They offered perspectives, advice, and support, reinforcing the lessons he had learned from his mother. Marcus felt grateful for the network of relationships in his life, recognizing that wisdom and guidance could come from multiple sources, all working together to help him navigate complex emotional situations. Lillian, too, found moments of reflection. She thought about her experiences observing Tiffany, the careful planning and patience that had been required, and the emotional resilience she had needed to remain calm and composed. She recognized that her love for Marcus had given her the strength to act decisively, even when it was uncomfortable or emotionally draining. Lillian understood that being a parent sometimes meant making difficult choices to protect those we love, and that the lessons we impart can shape the future in profound ways. As time went on, Marcus began to rebuild his confidence and emotional balance. He engaged more deeply with his work, dedicating himself to projects that were both challenging and fulfilling. He also explored new hobbies, interests, and social connections, all while reflecting on the qualities he valued most in a partner. Marcus's growth was evident. He was stronger, wiser, and more self-aware, having learned important lessons about trust, discernment, and emotional intelligence. Lillian observed these changes with quiet pride, knowing that her intervention had not only prevented potential heartbreak but also guided her son toward personal growth and maturity. In the midst of healing, Marcus and Lillian also strengthened their bond. They shared moments of laughter, reflection, and mutual support, deepening the trust and understanding between them. Marcus realized that his mother's guidance was not just about protection, it was about nurturing him into a man capable of making thoughtful, informed decisions. Lillian, in turn, felt fulfilled, knowing that her careful observation, patience, and unwavering love had contributed to Marcus's development and well-being. Eventually, Marcus began to look forward with optimism. He understood that the experience with Tiffany, while painful in the moment, had been a crucial step in his personal journey. He had learned to value authenticity over charm, substance over appearances, and integrity over superficiality. Marcus felt prepared for the future, confident that he would recognize a partner who truly aligned with his values and aspirations. Lillian, always by his side, felt assured that her son was ready to navigate life with both heart and discernment. The story's resolution also reinforced important lessons about family, trust, and love. Marcus understood that the bond between a parent and child could provide guidance, perspective, and protection in ways that were invaluable. He recognized that Lillian's actions were not about control or interference but about wisdom, foresight, and care. Lillian's experience underscored the power of patience, observation, and careful judgment, demonstrating that love often requires courage and thoughtful action. In the months that followed, Marcus continued to grow personally and professionally. He nurtured relationships built on trust, respect, and authenticity. He approached new friendships and potential romantic connections with a careful balance of openness and discernment, guided by the lessons he had learned. Lillian remained a constant source of wisdom and support, offering guidance when needed and celebrating Marcus's successes and milestones. Their relationship, strengthened by the experiences with Tiffany, became even more resilient and deeply connected. The story concluded on a hopeful and uplifting note. Marcus had emerged wiser, more self-aware, and prepared for future relationships that would align with his values and aspirations. Lillian had fulfilled her role as a protective, loving mother, demonstrating the importance of patience, observation, and courage in safeguarding the well-being of loved ones. Together, they had navigated a challenging situation, learned invaluable lessons, and strengthened their bond, leaving both with a sense of clarity, peace, and hope for the future. By the end of this journey, Marcus and Lillian reflected on the experience with gratitude and understanding. The challenges they faced had tested their patience, judgment, and emotional resilience, but the outcome had affirmed the power of love guided by wisdom. Marcus felt ready to embrace the future with discernment, integrity, and an open heart, while Lillian felt satisfied knowing that her careful, patient actions had protected her son and contributed to his growth as a thoughtful, self-aware adult. In the end, the story was not just about ending a relationship, it was about lessons learned, wisdom gained, and the enduring strength of family bonds. Marcus and Lillian had navigated a complex emotional landscape together, emerging stronger, wiser, and more connected than ever. Their journey highlighted the importance of honesty, integrity, and discernment in relationships, while celebrating the unbreakable bond between a mother and her child, a bond that guides, protects, and nurtures, even in the most challenging circumstances.